John Kobylt Show, KFI, AM 640, live everywhere on the iHeartRadio app. We're on Instagram Live now. Is that true? All right, just checking. You're being recorded. You're broadcast all over the world right now. Dominic Choi is here. Dominic is the LAPD interim chief, and we haven't had a chief of the LAPD on as a guest ever. We had Daryl Gates on many years ago, but he wasn't the chief at the time. He'd already left. So, Dominic, welcome.
Thanks for having me, John.
In studio. We're going to get right to it because I know everybody's time is limited here. I'm not here to be contentious with you, although I may turn out that way. But I want to talk to you about the stuff that we hear from the listeners. You know, we get an enormous amount of feedback on social media and emails and calls, and also what I get in my private life. All my friends know I have a radio show that talks about this. And everybody seems to ask or complain about the same things. And a lot of it has to do with policing in Los Angeles. And it's a different agenda than you might get from the Los Angeles Times. What they write about your department is not what most people are interested ever. Stuff they write about never comes up in real life. And the first thing I wanted to talk about, so many people are frustrated that when a homeless encampment shows up in front of their kid's school or in their kid's park, or on their block, that they can never get the police to do anything about it. And the police's response is, go talk to the police chief, go talk to the mayor, whether it's Karen Bass, Garcetti, Michael Moore, or now you. Why is that?
Well, first of all, that's the wrong answer. I expect all of my officers to know what our homelessness initiatives are and what they can and cannot do as it relates to addressing homelessness problems that are brought to them by community members. So that's first and foremost. And if that's not the case, that's on me, and I need to continue to educate them.
All right, then you have a lot of cops who are giving the wrong answer to a lot of people.
That's fair. That's fair. I need to do a better job in training or messaging that. I will tell you our efforts in addressing home. First of all, if there's a crime involved, it doesn't matter whether the person, the suspect, or the victim is homeless. Our officers absolutely know that they are allowed to and expected to enforce the law as it relates to criminal behavior. Now, there are quality of life issues that some people may perceive as criminal behavior, which they are not. We have a different approach to that. We work closely with the mayor's office in a program that you've all heard of, Inside Safe. And we have to make sure the city, and when I say we, I'm talking about a multidisciplinary team that involves the mayor's office, LAPD, sanitation, all of our social workers, and come up with an approach where we identify housing. Housing is offered. We do proactive engagement with a particular encampment, and those people are placed.
Okay, but that sounds like a long-term thing. What I'm talking about, and you honed in on it, what you call quality of life, the public thinks are crimes. If somebody is screaming, carrying on in the middle of the night, to them, that's disturbing the peace. They ought to be arrested and taken to jail, at least for the night, because they can't sleep and it scares the family. See, screaming in the middle of the night, if they go outside and they see a guy injecting drugs in front of the kids on the way to school, throwing needles on the ground, I think most people think defecating and urinating in public used to be a quality of life crime. Again, you're not being sent to state prison for a year, but it's something that should be addressed by the police immediately. Why is it not?
Well, I think the issue is that officers will respond to those calls for service. Absolutely. They're not going to not respond. But when they get there, so oftentimes these individuals, when they're doing, for example, screaming in the middle of the night, that's due to a mental illness. We're trying to get services and resources out there to help that person. But
it's been 7 years, and my listeners say, and my friends say, no, they don't come. They don't come, and they're burned out on getting these calls. It's the same calls all night, every day, and the police have decided to stand down. As a practice, maybe that's not what you're instructing them to do, but as a practice, they're not showing up anymore.
So I disagree. If a radio call comes out, our officers will respond. Now, if the response is longer, that's a totally separate issue, such as a staffing issue. When our non-emergency calls, the response times have gone up because of our staffing. Our emergency calls, meaning crimes in progress, violent crimes in progress, or even property crimes like burglaries or retail theft, those calls we absolutely respond to in an emergency manner in under 7 minutes.
For burglaries?
For burglaries in progress.
Again, in progress. Okay. Yes. because I hear plenty from people who say they call after the burglary
Yes.
and you get told. In fact, I think that happened to my wife. I think she had something stolen from her car, and it was like, well, go to the website and fill out a form.
So that would be considered a non-emergency call or report call, which is our non-coded, if you will, calls. And I'm just as I said a moment ago, those calls are taking longer to get to.
Mm. Well, doesn't that give the bad guys free reign if they know no one's really going to show up? Even after a neighbor phones in and say, "Hey, I just saw somebody walking out of my neighbor's house, and they were carrying a safe or they were carrying some electronics. He's just getting in the car, and nobody ever comes." So how does that help people in the neighborhood?
Well, I don't think that gives the criminals free reign. There's obviously alarms and cameras, and when those alarms or cameras do call our dispatch 911, and that's a crime in progress, it is absolutely a coded or emergency call, and we do get there within 7 minutes or less.
I was over at a friend's house the other night for dinner, and he said there have been 25 burglaries in a neighborhood of about 400 homes just in the last couple of years. 25 out of 400. That was a pretty high hit rate there. And so what's happened is, and you've probably seen this, they are all throwing in extra money for private security cars. Probably on my side of town, the west side, can count 6, 7, 8 different companies charging every resident hundreds of dollars a month in extra security costs because they say the police are not patrolling, and when they get called, they don't come. Now, this is what my friends tell me, and this is what I've seen with my own eyes. And the burglaries are really bad, and nobody seems to care.
Yeah, so I'll agree with you to a certain point. Burglaries are bad; they've increased, but the officers are absolutely patrolling, and they're out there to the extent they can be, as visible as they can be. I'll tell you, when you see something like what you just described, a small geographic area that's being hit multiple times over a period of time, that's typically indicative of a crew or the same suspects seeing opportunity in a certain neighborhood and they're taking advantage of it. We do have a task force that's addressing those types.
Yeah, I think he said ultimately they traced it to like a South American crime crew from Chile.
Yeah. So what we're seeing is these groups come in, South American groups from various South American countries come in on tourist visas. And so there's really not, I won't get into all these, there's not a robust background check, but they come in on tourist visas. They stay for a period of time. They do their criminal behavior. Not all of them, but some of these groups do. And then they go back to their home countries and untouched, unscathed. We've been seeing that, but we've also now, because we have these task forces and we're tracking this behavior, we have a lot of information and people that we can monitor when this stuff happens. We've had a lot of success, not just in LAPD, but LA County and the broader area in Southern California, where these groups are burglarizing everything from Ventura County all the way down to the border.
Right.
But we are tracking, following, and making arrests on those. And we have seen that positively impact this trend.
Now, we started talking off the air briefly, and I said, let's save this for on the air. I said to you when the commercial break started, there's a lot of people really, really angry. And you said, is it because of social media and television, or is that what makes them angry? Because your data says that what? I don't want to mischaracterize it. What does your data say?
My comments really were, is it because really what I meant is it because people are now intimately aware of what crime's occurring in their neighborhoods, in the city, because of social media, because of the media that's covering it? Or is it because they have truly been a victim or experienced crime? So overall, our data, which we track very closely, our data shows year-to-date 2024, our overall Part 1 crimes, how we track it, are actually down year over year.
And Part 1 is what?
Part 1 crime includes homicides, rapes, robberies, aggravated assaults, burglaries, motor vehicle thefts, larceny, violent and property crime, broken up into various categories. That's what's tracked. So overall, that's down year over year, about 3.2%. And our violent crime is up slightly, but our property crime is down significantly.
But there's not a person in the world that notices if crime is up or down 3%. First of all, the crime has been up in recent years when it comes to daily life, when it comes to shoplifting, burglary, all the homeless weirdos in the street is menacing.
So there's a difference between numbers of crime and perception of crime. Now, my job as the public safety, as the chief of LAPD, give me a second, that I'm tasked with addressing not just the number of crime, the data, but I'm also tasked with addressing the perception of crime. For example, if you're a victim of, I don't know, somebody stole your hubcaps, you're still a victim of crime, no matter how serious. And if I tell you that crime's down, you're going to say absolutely not because you experienced it. So part of my role is also to address, a big part is the perception of crime.
But because all the crazy homeless people are allowed to wander around, it makes people feel that at any moment something bad is going to happen to me.
That's the feeling of safety and perception of crime that I'm talking about.
Right. Okay. But it's still bad news. It's still something that the police and the city should do something about, because every time I go out with my wife, she's spinning around looking, and there's always bad guys wandering around. And I'll go back maybe 7 years ago and there wasn't. Okay. We go to the same restaurants we did, the same stores. Santa Monica, which I know is not your jurisdiction, 3rd Street Promenade used to be a fun place to go. And now it's an outdoor insane asylum. So you're never going to sell the idea that some statistics show that crime is down when you have all these mental patients wandering around, some of whom are committing crimes. All of them are committing crimes every day. Most of the stuff they do is a crime under the way I grew up. You see what I'm saying?
Well, that, again, perception versus data are two different things.
Well, what do you?
So, and what you talked about earlier, you when we were off there, you talked about it. Is there a chance that this behavior is now becoming acceptable and people are not reporting crime?
Oh,
I absolutely believe that.
Yes.
Right. So every meeting that I go to, every community event that I attend, I always emphasize the importance that no matter how small you think the crime, you have to report it.
I know people who are not calling in the crimes they see anymore. And I know the stores aren't. They're just locking up all the goods. I go to a CVS drugstore. I can't get a toothpaste anymore. So everything's locked up.
We're doing everything. If we have bad data, we have bad strategies, right? So we have to have good data to have good strategies. So
is it possible that you guys and like the LA Times, which to me is a propaganda rag, you guys have faith in data that is wildly misplaced? Because can all the people be wrong?
First of all, it's not wildly misplaced. I think their perception of safety or their perception of crime is absolutely accurate.
Does perception mean we're imagining it?
No, not at all. But the data shows one thing, and I hear, just like what you're saying, I hear from the community that crime is on the increase. And I think that's because people are not reporting it.
Okay.
We have to have people report it. Right. Some of our deployment data and everything else.
Why don't they report it? I can think of two reasons. One, we touched on earlier. They feel like the cops aren't showing up anyway.
It takes too long to get there.
Right.
But here's another thing. We have increased our online reporting, right?
Yeah.
Our online reporting system. And we've expanded the type of reports that can be reported. So we are doing everything we can to get people to provide us with the information, the data in whatever way they may, so that we can respond accordingly, strategically to these crime trends.
Here's another thing. Even if you guys arrest somebody, Gascon is letting him out in 6 hours, and he's going to go back and do it again, and that is happening.
You know, I hear all that all the time. You know what I tell my folks, my cops?
What?
Listen, don't worry about those things. Do your job, do the job best that you can, and be a leader in this industry. It doesn't matter if the guy or girl or suspect comes in and out of the jail system. That's not our role.
Do you think that's a good thing, that they're spinning through the system in a few hours instead of going to jail?
That's never a good thing, but that's not something that we're going to get involved with. I need to make sure that my cops are responding to the calls for service and addressing the immediate public need, public safety issue as quickly and as appropriately as possible.
Do you feel any responsibility to standing up, since you are police chief, at least for a while, and saying, George Gascon, you're making our life as police officers very difficult, and the people we serve are scared to death because of your policies?
I have quarterly meetings with George Gascon, and he is keenly aware of this department and our position on filing and the revolving door. Does
he care?
There. Of course he cares.
He does?
Yeah, he listens to us. Now,
but he hasn't changed his policies.
Well, I'm not going to speak about what he does. He can speak on it. But I don't want to get involved in his discussion or what he does. I can tell you that I want to keep my people, my officers, focused on what they're tasked to do on a day-to-day basis. There's a lot of noise out there. There's a lot of things that influence crime trends and the perception of safety, and we can sit here and talk about it for hours, but a lot of stuff is not under the control of LAPD.
Bottom line is, most people I know, again, I know primarily the West Side, but I hear it from elsewhere. We have listeners all over. They are absolutely terrified of going downtown. They will not go to a restaurant. They won't go to a show. They won't go to the theater. No way. They're not going downtown no matter what at night. What do you say to them?
And I'm sorry to hear that. I really hate to hear that. Again, well, I wish they would. I mean,
But they're terrified. They think
yeah.
somebody's going to stab him in the neck. The crazy people are allowed to wander the sidewalks. Guy's going to jump out, stab him in the neck, and that's it. And, there is a news story on that. It seems every day.
Well, not in downtown. It's spread out. I mean, but again, this goes to my comment about, and it's a question. It's not a statement. The question is, could it be that the perceptions about crime are also being more widely publicized because of the advent of social media, which we didn't have 10 years ago?
Right.
Right.
But now we know what's really going on, maybe?
Yeah, but the numbers show that the property crime is decreasing, yet we're talking about organized theft all the time.
Decreasing from
right?
what?
From prior year's numbers. We track year over year. And that's one thing I think we all agree on. LAPD tracks numbers very closely if they're reported.
I don't know. You know what? People's reality. Nobody complains about crime if it doesn't exist in their life.
I'm not arguing that their perception is not accurate. Their perception is reality.
10 years ago,
So
nobody talked about it. We weren't talking about the crime on the show very much. We were talking about homelessness very much. My friends weren't worried about going downtown or going out to eat.
Yeah, I would argue that 10 years ago that the everyday business person wasn't seeing crime on a day-to-day basis on their phone like they are now.
All right.
But I'm not. Let me just clarify. The perception is reality. I'm not arguing that, and we need to.
No, the crimes are either happening or they're not.
Yeah,
it's not whether I see them on my phone.
I don't want your listeners to believe that I'm being defensive and there's not a problem. There absolutely is a problem, and we need to do better. We need to address it. I'm just trying to figure out here in discussions with you of if the numbers are saying that, for example, violent crime is up. I'm not going to argue that. Property crime is down year over year. What's causing the stir about these home burglaries, things like that? Is it social media? Is it because if the numbers are down, we didn't talk about it 10 years ago, why are we talking about it?
Maybe your numbers are screwed. Maybe your numbers don't work.
Yeah, I do have a lot of confidence in our numbers. Again, if they're not being reported, which I think the significant issues are being reported. Now, if you're talking about quality of life issues about just,
or maybe the amount of crime going on, even if it's down 3%, is more than the public wants to put up with.
That's fair. That's fair. I wouldn't want to, if it was in my neighborhood, I wouldn't want to put up with any crime.
Yeah, I mean, there's no way I'd notice crime being up or down 3%. Nobody would. All I'd know is whether, when's my wife comfortable going out to dinner downtown or going down to the promenade again.
I agree. But we do have to have a gauge internally for LAPD. We got to have a way to measure.
Will you come back sometime?
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Dominic Choi. It was nice talking with you. Thank you for coming on.
Good talking.
All right. LAPD Chief